So a little while ago, I made a video talking about Microsoft and how I felt like they were really starting to turn things around this generation. It took them about 6 months from when they launched the Xbox Series X with basically nothing around it from Microsoft's first party. But since then, they seem to have been really working to close out 2021 in a pretty strong overall fashion with several releases, some of which are up for Game of the Year currently. But I did say, you know what? I got to see what happens with Halo before I really say that this could potentially be Microsoft's best holiday ever. The reviews came out for Halo and, well, here we are. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave Plus channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So, as I said, Microsoft had a slower start, and then they really started to ramp things up midway through 2021. And it's the point now where we're starting to see different opinions really start to change, and even some pieces like this being written up. Xbox is the games publisher of 2021. There were some people who took exception with this headline, but I don't necessarily think Christopher Dring is incorrect here. If you really think about what's come out this year, been a bit quieter. Like, it really has. There's no obvious Game of the Year frontrunner currently. I mean, if you look at the list of the nominees, there's nothing that's like 95 or 96. There's no God of War or Breath of the Wild or something like that that's obvious. They're like, well, I mean, clearly that's going to win. It's completely open right now for Game of the Year. So sure, a weaker year, of course, shines more of a spotlight on something like what Microsoft has been able to do over the last 6 months, but based on what they've done in the past, I think this is great for the future of Microsoft and really this generation overall, because we're used to mostly looking to Nintendo and Sony for the big, ridiculous 95 style game on Metacritic, but now it seems like Microsoft could be a company that shows up with a really well-rated game that's not necessarily Forza, which, I mean, hey, Forza comes out, Horizon 5, high quality, gets in the low 90s, and that's kind of expected from Playground, and I'm excited to see what they do with something like Fable. But looking through this opinion piece here, which is very well written, I'll leave a link to it down below in the description, does go over some of the early troubles that Microsoft had, specifically with some of their cancellations, like Scalebound and Fable Legends, which, yeah, Scalebound, that still kind of hurts people now because the concept was interesting and it was different. That was the biggest thing for Microsoft. It wasn't the typical thing that Microsoft would do at the time. Unfortunately, didn't make it out of probably even basic development over what Platinum was saying and what Microsoft was saying and how they just kind of clashed and it didn't work out, unfortunately. But then we start to fast forward a bit more, games like Crackdown 3, and it wasn't good. I think people really were hoping that Crackdown 3 would be a great game that could potentially show off the power of the cloud, but that game had a lot of problems. Unfortunately, Crackdown, I think, peaked with the first Crackdown. I mean, some people like Crackdown 2, but the original Crackdown was, I think, very good on the Xbox 360, and it was kind of downhill from there. If you try to find a Crackdown 3 game online now, good luck. But even games like Halo Wars 2, State of Decay 2 really failed to, I would say, make an impact overall. And remember, they were trying to sell Game Pass and show that it was a viable business model for creating these really good, high-quality games. Now, that's not to say that they didn't release some good games, right? Like, we had Ori, that's an awesome 2D Metroidvania-style platforming game. I'd even say Gears of War, I think Gears 5, that was pretty good. I like that game as well. The single player was fun. Don't really get into the multiplayer side, but it was great when it released and you just kind of download it on Game Pass. But over the last 6 months, they've really been on a roll with different releases. Take, for example, they had Flight Simulator. That was pushed to the Xbox, but that is a game that certainly could have had some pretty serious issues, I would say, just getting it onto the platform and working correctly. Psychonauts 2, which was from Double Fine, but this was a purchase Microsoft made and even decided to delay the game further, provide them with more capital in order to polish the game. And I mean, Tim Schafer's on record saying that if Microsoft wasn't backing them, the game probably would not have come out in the state that it did in its like highly polished form. And, you know, I liked Psychonauts 2. It was a very good game, highly rated. Like I said, up for Game of the Year. People are, of course, pointing out Deathloop because Microsoft owns Arcane Lion in turn from Bethesda and ZeniMax. But, like, that's a tough one because Microsoft maybe signed off on a delay, but they came in at like the last minute. At least we have some sort of recognition from Double Fine that Microsoft had a direct impact on Psychonauts 2's development. Not necessarily with Deathloop, though. But either way, a year from now, it'll be on Xbox Game Pass, as I believe there's a 1-year exclusivity. Age of Empires 4 came out. Very good. Fans of the Age of Empires series seem to really enjoy it. We had, of course, Forza Horizon 5, and now Halo Infinite, which released, currently sitting at an 86. And I will admit, Halo Infinite, I pointed out specifically because one of the things I think Microsoft has had an issue and something they've been working through is their overall management of these studios. And then we hear they're adding more and more studios in, and it's like, oh, they're going to manage all of these other studios on top of what they've been struggling to manage already. Seems like Halo Infinite at least has released in a good state. That was one of my concerns. Can 343 pull this thing off after all the development issues delayed from the Xbox Series X's release? Master Chief's on the back of my Xbox Series X box. I say that a lot because it was clearly something that was just chaos in the background. The fact that they would put Master Chief on the back of the box, do all these marketing campaigns with things like Monster Energy, and then have to delay at the last minute, not exactly an image of confidence and organization. But the game's coming out tomorrow. Reviewers have had a chance to look at it and have given it an 86, which is about where I was expecting something like this Halo campaign to land. We've been playing the multiplayer for just about a month now, and it's good in terms of its gameplay. There's a lot they have to get right when it comes to everything else around it, the playlist, the cosmetics, cash shop, progression, all that stuff. But I would prefer that they get the gameplay right out of the gate and then work on the progression rather than be the opposite. The progression's great, but the gameplay is just terrible because you want the core game to be good. We know this is an ongoing thing for them, and hopefully in a couple of years, the game itself is really, really good. But for now, you know what? I'm surprised, I guess is the right word, after everything we've heard and all the turmoil, that Halo Infinite at least has come out in a good state overall. So now just reflecting on the last 6 months of this year, it feels a bit different for Microsoft and their Xbox brand. It doesn't feel like necessarily, oh, we have to look to Nintendo and Sony for the big, high-quality, high-rated blockbusters, right? That was a concern around Game Pass, is that we wouldn't necessarily get games that are really, really good because it's part of a subscription service. You got to keep having games coming out consistently. And over the last 6 months, they've been able to do that and also release games that are up there for Game of the Year nominations. We're going to see what happens in 2022, but at least at this point, I'm cautiously optimistic around what Microsoft is doing and where they're headed. We know next year, Microsoft is going to be up against, some pretty good games, we assume, unless there's delays, from Nintendo and Sony, especially Sony. They're going to come out of the gate in February with Horizon Forbidden West, which looks fantastic. And then we know that Gran Turismo is going to happen. And then we know that God of War Ragnarok, we believe God of War Ragnarok is going to happen. With Nintendo, they're going to have Kirby, which is a big departure for the Kirby series overall, becoming like this big 3D action-adventure style game. Breath of the Wild 2, and who knows, maybe something else from the Metroid side. And then Nintendo always has some big surprises up their sleeves. So going into 2022, I'll be curious to see how Starfield turns out, Redfall, and then several others thrown in there. But the best part about this is we no longer have two participants in like the super high quality game reveals and releases. We have three now. And that's great all the way around because we can watch these companies battle it out for our time and money with big time game reveals and releases. And, it feels pretty good going into this generation. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. A bit of a turnaround for Microsoft already this generation over the last 6 months, capping everything off this year with Halo Infinite coming out in, to be honest, a pretty good state. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.